Ready? Okay, call to order, Safety and Public Works, February 6, 2023, 6:45 in council chambers. 5 items on tonight's agenda, first of which is to adopt a resolution and approve letter of support for the RAISE grant application for Trunk Highway 210. Mr. Dean, go ahead.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. So this item is the staff requesting council approve a letter of support and adopting a resolution supporting MnDOT's RAISE grant application. So they are applying for one of the IIJA big federal act infrastructure bill grants that's out there. What they're intending to do is apply for most of the, I guess it would be the local partners match. So our costs, county's costs, I believe DNR costs are kind of rolled into there too. They have some of the state money that's already kind of been committed to this project, so they're really trying to focus on everybody else's as part of this grant application. The only cost that may not be eligible as part of that is anything that might not be federally eligible. So some of the aesthetic stuff might possibly not be eligible. I'm still not sold if the underground utilities are. They are applying with the underground utilities in the application. So it is my understanding that they would be eligible, but I have not got full confirmation of that. They did not include the pedestrian bridge, the potential of a pedestrian bridge over there on the east end by Lum Park in the application because it's not shown in any of the layouts or their current scoping. However, if there was additional funds in that grant at the end of the project, those could be applied for that bridge if we add one into the construction project.
Okay, so I read through the letter that we're adopting to reinforce or take a resolution on backing, and a lot of the language does support pedestrian improvements and bigger sidewalks and things like that are going through with this project. Why not just add that bridge in as part of the grant? Is that
because it hasn't been, I guess, call it vetted as part of their initial scoping. It hasn't been really discussed too much in the PMTs, and at this level, like I mentioned, it's not included in their layouts that they're showing. And we haven't fully decided if that bridge is going to be part of the project. So they didn't want to include it in the grant application with the intention that it may not happen or that it's not shown in any of the exhibits.
okay? Would this put us at a better advantage for other grants that could possibly help with not just the bridge but the aesthetics and other sidewalk improvements?
For other types of grants, this would probably cover almost all of our costs.
What's
so
that?
If we were to get this, that would almost cover all of our costs.
Okay.
Outside of the couple little ineligible items that there might be, but I think they've generally applied for almost all of our local match.
Okay.
Streetlights?
That'd be nice.
I can't say that for sure. Okay. It would be nice, yes. We'll have to clarify that part of it, but I believe as much as we were able to include with that grant application, I think that's what we're applying for. They are applying for the maximum under that grant. I think it's $25 million. Beyond that, it goes into a different type of process. So they are applying for the maximum that they can.
Okay.
I'd move to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion is second. Any more discussion?
Yeah, who's actually applying? You said they. Is that state, MnDOT?
MnDOT, yep.
Okay.
They are the agency doing that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any more discussion? Hearing none, go to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. On to the next item, number 2, discussion on 2023-24 downtown snow removal district. Always a fun topic. Go ahead, Mr. Dane, if you want to explain this one.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. So figure this was good timing while we're still kind of in the winter season thinking about it. We've had a handful of different events that we've already had. Tom's Backhoe to have to go downtown and do clearing, and knowing that we still have quite a bit of season left here and what might occur, at least cost-wise, for downtown. So one thing that was requested of us to continue to do from some of the downtown business owners and the property owners was to continue to explore ways to make that more economical for them. We introduced a possible alternative back in fall when we first brought this up, and I'm just bringing it up now because we've had some additional pieces that continue to come up throughout the winter that become a challenge for us. So not only is the downtown a challenge for us to be able to get to, especially when it's less than 4, because that's an extra handful of blocks that we have to do clearing on. But there's a lot of other spots in town, and I did include that after the memo, kind of our priority schedule. Those are areas, sidewalks, and trails that are very difficult for us to get to, especially when you have our street department that's obviously focused on streets. The priority's always been streets and alleys and get people to be able to get from point A to point B. What usually ends up falling in the lower priority is sidewalks, trails. I know it was mentioned at some point, the new crosswalks on South 6, we were finally able to get those cleared out. But ultimately, those are going to end up falling into a lower priority than getting the streets cleared. So throughout the winter, that become a challenge for us. So
That was a,
being able to get to those will consistently be day 2, day 3, day 4 tasks for us to be able to get to. So we came up with this alternative that we felt like could accomplish a couple different things. One, running a few scenarios in it, we feel that this would be a considerable cost savings for downtown. But it would also provide us an avenue to address some of these trouble areas that we just can't get to right away. So to summarize, the alternative we're proposing here would be hiring an additional, I guess it would be a potential parks maintenance staff. This person would be tasked with clearing sidewalks downtown for every snow event. Right now, the downtown district gets their sidewalks cleared only in instances of 4 inches or more. This person would clear their sidewalks for every snow event. So if you're in that downtown special assessment district, you would not have to clear your sidewalks. That staff person would be responsible for that. Once they're done completing clearing downtown sidewalks, they would move on to other areas that we have a lot of needs for. South 6 crosswalks, bridges, trails, other sidewalks we are responsible for, especially downtown. That person can help do those things. And then the other side of that, that person can also be our point person for the downtown landscaping that we have to be taking care of every year. Sometimes we're able to accomplish that with a temporary worker throughout the summer, but usually when they leave come August, we still have some unmet needs throughout the rest of the fall with that maintenance, and that usually falls into full-time staff. So it can be a little bit inconsistent too, because you're using that temp staff and then you're having to switch. So it is nice to have a point person to be able to address those pieces. So again, summarizing, when we ran through this, the assessed cost would be a considerable amount less when you're billing the staff hours based on the one scenarios I was just running through with kind of an average snowfall amounts throughout a winter. You're a little bit less than, or about half of what is currently getting assessed to the downtown business owners. So again, there's a little bit of pros and cons because we're not going to hire out the streets. The street crew would have to clear that, so that's an extra task on them to have to do some clearing. There'd probably be a little bit of inconvenience because I'm sure that, like rest of downtown, not in that district, they'd have to windrow and come back to and haul it out maybe the next day. That's kind of how they've handled those snowfall events downtown in the past, is they have to windrow and haul those out where we can't move them to the right. We would probably address downtown similarly, so it'd be a little inconvenient during that day or two while we're waiting to haul that out. But again, the trade-off is you get your sidewalk cleared every event and you don't have to address that.
Mr. Chair?
yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Jesse, what kind of equipment would this staff person use? And if is there a need for buying something that we don't have already?
If you wanted to go this route, we would identify a piece of equipment that would be able to address the downtown sidewalks a little bit better. The broom that we have right now is too wide. It won't be able to navigate through a lot of the things that are downtown on those sidewalks. There are smaller, call it tractors, the blowers and sweepers that you can acquire and go through there. If we can get that by the next winter, we would sure like to try and do that. We do have a walk-behind snowblower right now. Again, that's the issue there is time. It'd be very inefficient and cost that staff person an awful lot of time to have to clear those sidewalks. You get that tractor that can do the blowing, you can get that done a lot faster of a time.
When would you hire this person if we gave you the green light tonight to do it?
If we were to get the green light, I think we would try and hire it out for spring so we have them ready to go for summer landscaping.
Is this a one position person? Is there, if they're say, unavailable, they're sick or injured and they can't work, would somebody fill in for them that's currently employed by the city?
Yes, we would have one of our other parks or streets maintenance person cover for that person if they were off for whatever reason. And for that same reason, in the summertime when they're not doing downtown landscaping, because obviously that wouldn't be a full-time position, they would fall probably back into parks maintenance.
Well, my question is, if you could find somebody to work for this person if they're sick or injured, why can't we use that person now that would fill in?
Our staff is pretty taxed right now with what we have for facilities. Our parks maintenance, we only have 6 of those guys, and usually it's half and half for working on rinks, clearing rinks, and getting the sidewalks and trails cleared to the rinks that we use every day.
So, but if somebody were able to fill in if this individual is injured or can't work for whatever reason, how, you just kind of contradicted that.
We can pull from the other tasks. It's just a little less level of service at those other parks. It would be a little bit more difficult to be able to maintain those other facilities at the same level of service we have today.
And then as far as the equipment, what is the, you talked about a snowblower you have now, correct?
Yep, we have the little walk behind
But that
snowblower.
what you said wouldn't be the most effective. You'd need something different. Do you have an idea what that equipment would cost? Just a ballpark figure?
Probably like 50,000.
Okay, and then so that's not included in your,
It is not, because I did not have that.
okay.
I don't have that
right.
equipment vetted out at this time.
Well, I do like the idea of having somebody take care of our downtown gardens. Like, we need to figure that out. That has to be figured out at some point. We've been talking about it and kicking it around for years, I think, and it's still an issue. The snow removal thing, I hesitate to just jump on it and say, let's hire this person right now for the snow removal. What I think we need to find out more, because I don't see it included on here, maybe I missed it, but we talked some about including the 210 businesses, and I think we'd have to feel out with the 210 businesses whether they're willing to consider themselves a special services district for sidewalk clearing, so we can add that into helping pay for this person's labor during at least the winter months. I think keeping this person as is, as far as what we're spending on the downtown services for the special service district, taking care of gardens, I think we would get a lot more out of what we're paying currently just by paying this person with that funding. So if you put all that together, then we're not really spreading that out amongst all the taxpayers as much. What I'm seeing here is the downtown included. Is that correct? Just as far as the fees of sidewalk snow removal, that is included towards essentially paying for this person,
Correct. Yep.
but
So
not the 210 businesses on this document.
that is correct, because we don't have that district established at
Right.
this time. But it is something that we could look at and talk to those the 210 businesses about if that was something that they were interested in establishing a special assessment district for them to do sidewalk clearing there. But as of with this example, I just went with what we have currently. But you could use this alternative proposal that I have in here as kind of a baseline. You're potentially talking a little bit over $50 for a 50-foot of frontage through let's call it an average year. This has been typical the last couple of years for those kinds of snow events and the counts. So you can kind of see the difference between the two. So I guess it depends because the businesses on 210 have varying front footage. It's tough to say exactly, but you could use this as a ballpark for each one as the pitch, I guess.
Okay. I would just like to see the math on what that would cover, I guess, because I think it would be even more than what downtown is when you add up all the 210 businesses pitching in on this.
It depends on what your limits are. You can have quite a bit more blocks than what you have downtown.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, go ahead.
I got another question. I missed the total cost for the employee. What's your amount on that? That's a full-time employee, correct?
Correct. I believe I have to read.
If we got a ballpark, that'd be fine. You know.
Roughly about 83,000.
Say again?
Roughly about 83,000.
That's
Per
a
year.
Union position with the parks?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
We generally bill them out at $40 an hour. That's with all their benefits and stuff included in there.
So with our parks systems expanding, the constant need for beautification, I think the summer months definitely are justifiable. I don't know if we're at that point yet, or if we want to just stay in discussion about this, figure out exactly what that's going to cost. And maybe it doesn't seem like that big of a deal because it's just one person, but one person becomes two people, becomes three people. So,
And a $50,000 piece of equipment, or whatever it ends up being.
and more and more and more. I like the efficiency of it. I like that it helps eliminate a lot of the snow issues that we have, not just downtown, not just 210, but all the other sidewalk areas that we have to deal with, abating snow and different things like that, it helps with too. But I would just say pump the brakes for today until we know, one, what's the general consensus on 210 businesses. I think that would be something that maybe we could add in for a special services district, especially after those sidewalks are expanded, because that's going to be a lot more surface area in front of a lot of those businesses when we get there, including the bridge.
Would you like staff to reach out to the 210 corridor and
If we could,
have
yeah.
that discussion? Okay.
We should have a good list of them through all the meetings we've had for the 210 project already. So if we could get a feel for it.
Your 210, is that pretty much from like 9th down to the Mississippi? It's not west of the Mississippi, right?
I guess,
It would go to about Walgreens, I believe.
is
Or
that how far
maybe
you're
even
going?
further.
It's
on
entirely
how
up
far
to you
we
how
go.
far you'd want this to go. We could go as
Right.
far as Baxter Drive even.
But
I do know that side, on the west side of Washington, certainly has been issues with complaints that we receive in the community development department.
Sometimes the further away from the door, like if there's a parking lot in between your building and the sidewalk, it gets ignored. Not with everyone, but it happens. Is that enough for tonight as far as direction?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, moving on to item number 3. We have a discussion on the street lighting policy. And this is you again, Mr. Dean, if you want to fill us in on that.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. So this is just, let's call it maybe the last update that we needed to resolve here before we kind of have a full policy that we can bring before the council here. So the last piece was the commercial corridor poles. So as mentioned, the cost went up quite considerably on the pole costs. Overall, the entire system comes up to about $5,111, so $5,111 per pole, fixture, mast arm, everything included. The ability to mount banners increases that cost quite a bit because obviously we have to go a little bit stronger of a pole, a little bit thicker of a material to be able to handle the wind loading from those banners. So you're adding roughly another $1,200 per pole. So that brings up the entire assembly up to $6,300. Now, there was a request at the last meeting to explore if there was some more economical options of that fixture. So we did reach out to the supplier. We have not got a response yet, but their initial response was they were very skeptical that there was going to be a more economical version that was similar to this fixture. The more economical versions are like what you see now, the very simple Cobra head with very little material on it. If you want this more aesthetic one, it's probably going to be pretty close to the cost that you're seeing in this proposal. So with that, we ran a couple scenarios with the 210 and Washington Street reconstruction project, as well as one along the Oak Street corridor to just do a full replacement and a handful of different poles. With that, I'll just expand on the 210 Washington. So when I priced that out, I using their MnDOT standard spacing that they would want on their trunk highway system. I came up with about 98 poles. So in there, we have just under 618,000 for all of the poles throughout the entire corridor. MnDOT will contribute some. Essentially what they'll do is they'll contribute 50% of what they anticipate is the cost to light it to their standard, which comes up to about a $500,000 share. So between our costs and what's not included in that 618 is the cost of conduit and wiring. So that would be another cost that we would have to incur on top of the 618. But again, MnDOT is going to share in some of that cost as well through their policy.
Conduit and wiring would be replaced anyway with this project, correct?
Correct. Yep,
Okay.
we would need to upgrade that.
So that's not an additional cost either way.
Right.
Go ahead if you have more.
No, so just to clarify, the 210 Washington Street reconstruction project, I'm not sure. I can verify if that would be a state eligible expense. So it's possible you could roll that cost into the project itself and fund it through there rather than through that 30-year attrition program that we were talking about with the previous. So that is a different funding source that we could explore for that lighting on just that corridor. Oak Street, again, I did the same kind of instance where you're talking either up to almost 300,000 without banners or the ability to hang banners, or 365,000 approximately with the ability to hang banners. I did get some clarification on the request about how those banners are mounted. So they are mounted after the fact, at least the banner mounting hardware. So to be able to mount those banners, we have to upgrade those poles to the thicker poles. And those are the ones that cost the extra $1,200 per pole because of the weight.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you, Jesse. When you're talking about the banners, I want to get this clear. Are we talking about the light pole with some sort of bracket to hold a banner, or are we talking about a pole with some sort of bracket and the banner? Is
No.
there a banner that we'll have for people to use that's like a case or something, or?
It'll just be a bracket that gets mounted to the light pole, and that will allow us to be able to hang.
So when we're talking about banners, we're talking about brackets for banners.
Correct.
Not banners themselves.
Correct,
Right.
Okay,
brackets.
that's what I
and then,
thought. I just wanted to make sure. Okay.
Yep, and then we'd have to get a thicker pole to
Yep.
withstand the loading.
And
So,
every time we buy banners, they're more. We're gonna have to buy, every time we do banners, we're buying those banners. And I think even when we bought the last set of banners for the 150th, which ended up being really small,
Yeah.
they were pretty expensive too. I don't remember how much exactly, but I don't know what to tell you as far as what we're going to do with these banners, because I don't have counts on what we have right now. I don't have counts on what it would be if we were just gonna do the downtown area or just along 210 part of it. Without seeing options like that, I don't even know what to recommend. Because I see on here, it's, there's some details on pricing, but in the end, it's kind of just requesting, what do we want to do here? But there's no options.
Yep, so-
I'd like to see option A, option B, option C, and base them on cost, base them on if we're going to use any banner fixtures, base them on if we're going to keep that cost down as much as we possibly can while still maintaining this. And the other part of this that is going to be complicated, we have a motion that was directed by Personnel and Finance a year ago on where we're going to and how we're going to disperse these commercial lights and these new standards. And that's already been set. And now we're gonna have to possibly go back and see if PNF wants to change that motion, because that's not ours anymore. And which is fine, because it has a lot to do with how much money this costs. I think what we need to decide here, and I don't think it's gonna happen tonight, is how many of these poles do we want banners on? Where do we want banners? And that would be, options on that would be very helpful as far as what's the difference in pricing, where do we want them? I don't think that we need banners all the way through town, but I think there's certain areas where they would look better, especially if this increased cost could possibly be picked up by some MnDOT project that may or may not come up in the next, I don't know, 2 or 3 years.
Mr. Chair, really quick. So I did have a couple scenarios in here of with banners, without banners. So like the 210 Washington Street, if you were to price them all without banners, you're looking at roughly 500,000. And then if you have them all outfitted, you're closer to the 618. Again, that doesn't include the conduit wire. And I did the same thing for the Oak Street corridor. I would envision that would be our first corridor to address with this new standard if we were to replace that. The cost without the banners would be just under 300, and the cost with the banners would be about 365,000. So that would be the two scenarios. And now you could make a couple quick inferences with that of if you wanted to do maybe 50 and alternate sides of the street, 50% of the poles with banners, and pick the midpoint of the two, and that's probably a good budgetary number. So that kind of gives you an idea for at least those two corridors. I didn't price out the other ones yet, but those would probably be the next two corridors to get done with this new standard if that's the direction we wanted to go.
Okay.
So just real quick, if we get poles without any brackets, we don't get banners at all anytime unless we figure out some sort of handcrafted deal to put them up there on our own, right? I mean, it's be pretty crazy if we want to put banners up to not get these things with the banner brackets, right? I mean, is that a pretty fair assessment?
That's up to the council, if you guys want banners on those poles or not.
Okay.
If you have the inclination of wanting the banners on the poles, we would strongly recommend that you get the
Yeah,
thicker poles.
okay.
And if you didn't want to hang the banners at this time, we don't have to put those brackets up at this time, but we would still recommend the thicker poles if that was the case. Because if we wanted, after the fact, you wanted to put banners on them, we would have, if it was the thinner poles, we'd have to pull those out and put the thicker ones in.
Okay.
Which is what we want to avoid.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor? Okay. So are you looking for a motion on, I know you had a couple of things on here that you were looking for either direction on what we're talking about right now, also on moving forward with putting in the order for the residential?
That is correct. And
Poles
then
and
I
lights.
didn't mention in here, but I did have it in the memo, the outlets.
Oh, outlets.
They're roughly about $500 per pole. So I did list the two projects, 210's roughly 49,000 for all of the poles. Oak Street's about 29,000 for all of them.
Mr. Chair, I understand he's doing the price for the entire amount, but I don't think anybody's gonna expect us to have banners on every pole and outlets on every pole. So is there some way we can nail this down? Is there, I know there was, I think, Administrator Bergman had indicated she met with some people talking about streetlights, and I mean, I'd be happy to sit and listen to anybody who sat down and said, well, here's where we'd like to see them, and we have, out of 98 poles, we have exactly 48 of them we want to put banners on and outlets on. I'd be more comfortable, I mean, I haven't taken the time to analyze what poles need the extra strength for banners, and has anybody done that? I know you're saying for all of them, but has there been kind of an effort made to identify where we really want these and not really want them, or?
So the discussion previously was to put potentially the ability to hang banners on all the commercial corridors, but we needed to get that pricing to determine that. Really, it's up to the council if that's the direction you want staff to go, is to have that ability to put them on every pole, half the poles, none of the poles.
Well, at
some
the
mix
price
of
that it's at now, which has changed from when we originally went through this whole thing a year ago, it's more. And it's a little bit more than I'm willing to just commit and spend all that money on banners that we may or may not need. I know we don't need them, but they are nice to have in certain areas. And I think we need to nail down, having them in the entry one way or in either direction coming into the city. I think the city center, we should have the option to be able to have some banners for different celebrations or different times of the year. We already have those banners for downtown. That's a completely separate style of light that we're not even discussing in this part. So we already have that ability. As far as the outlets go, I don't see a big issue with adding them or leaving them all out, but I really don't think that we need an outlet on every single pole either. Do those get locked, Or can people just come up and plug their phone into it or plug their car into it so they can keep it warm in the winter?
No, I believe it's up by the light fixture, if I remember right. But I can
Okay.
clarify that with BP.
I know the downtown ones are lower because there's events that use those.
Yep.
But I know the discussion is for wreaths during Christmas.
Yep,
And,
that was the other part, was if the ability to hang lit wreaths along those corridors as well.
Right. Again, if it's included in our big project and MnDOT's gonna cover 50% of it, that's a lot easier decision. We don't know that for the rest of our city though. So I'm not gonna commit to anything other than maybe keeping outlets where they're at currently and not adding any. That's what I would lean toward.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah,
thank you. And maybe I can just repeat what I think I'm hearing the Safety and Public Works Committee is really looking for. You're looking for maybe options A, B, and C. You're looking for very specific cost to the polls based on what has been discussed. We
Yeah.
could bring back something to you that maybe option A shows X number of this poll, X number of banners on these streets. Maybe B is a lesser option, C is a lesser option than B. In a spreadsheet, come back to you maybe with maps that identify specifically where those light fixtures would be, what type, and then which would have banners, which would not, which will have power, and which will not. Is that what I'm hearing?
yeah, that is exactly what I'm talking about, because if we don't do it that way, it's just gonna keep changing. So if we have those options and we go with one of them, this isn't something we wanna rush through and just decide right now. I think what you're explaining is what I'm picturing, what we should have. And so moving forward, this is something that's gonna shape what our streets look like for the next 50 years or more. So let's just take our time, make sure we get it nailed down and pick the best one that makes the most sense.
Well, like, for instance, I think you indicated there was 98, if I'm not mistaken, or 89 lights for the stretch of Washington that the MnDOT project's gonna be on. The last thing I'd wanna see us do is buy banners for each one of those poles and outlets, obviously. I don't think we need to put the entire stretch of Washington, with banners and outlets. So I think you got the picture of what exactly we're looking for. Where are the key areas you wanna have them?
Right.
Yeah, that's.
Yep.
If somebody wants to sit down and figure that out and tell me, I'll be happy to,
Then we can make a decision.
yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I don't think you've rushed this at all. I think that this has taken an entire flipping year. So my question is, do we have an end date on this? What is our goal here? When are we gonna have this done, and when is it gonna be completed?
So the nice part is the residential's kind of been decided. That's kind of the highest priority because we need to get those poles ordered for North Brainerd to have them be able to get put in. The commercial poles, we have a little bit more lead time. So Washington Street isn't for another few years, and the rest of the corridors, I don't think there's a pressing need to have to replace those poles. We want to get them replaced, but there's nothing that says they have to get replaced this next year. So we have a runway of time with those, but the residential ones was the priority. So I can work on getting the other options and maps to kind of illustrate that for the committee. If I could, I would look for a recommendation on ordering those residential ones.
Yeah. So I think, to his point, we kind of nailed down the whole residential thing. I don't know if it was last meeting or the meeting before, but are you looking for a motion?
Yes,
on
please,
that?
sir. Yep.
Okay. So we're looking for a motion to move forward with ordering the residential poles and fixtures.
I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion on that? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. We got two quick items here. Number 4 is reviewing the draft ordinance amendment for section 320 administrative citations. Mr. Kramvik, if you want to zip through that one.
Sounds good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So staff is presenting a draft ordinance based on the recommendation from the last city council meeting. Staff has drafted an ordinance that allows for the administrative abatement of garbage, grass, animal feces, and snow removal. Also, for repeat offenders of garbage, grass, animal feces, and snow removal, the schedule shall be a $300 citation and administrative abatement. So I just wanted to give an example here of the ordinance. For example, a property that has a new lawn violation will receive a warning letter, first citation, second citation, and third citation, and then administrative abatement. If the same owner of the same property has another long grass violation after abatement within 12 months, they would receive an immediate $300 citation, and after 10 days, the lawn would be administratively abated. Also, kind of for instance, lawns that had issues last summer and fall that have already gone through the warning, 3 citations, and abatement will receive the one $300 citation this spring, and then will be abated after 10 days based on the new language of the code. Certainly can answer any questions of the committee. Staff is recommending approval of the draft ordinance as presented, and for staff to bring this draft ordinance as a first reading at the next council meeting.
Excellent. Anybody have questions about that? Makes sense?
I'd move that we bring this forward for the first reading at our next council meeting. Is that what you're looking for?
Yep, exactly.
Second.
Motion and second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, go to a vote. All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. And final item is direction on active code enforcement cases. Go ahead, Mr. Kramvik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So staff is bringing one property for the committee for review. Attached is the case file for 1306 Oak Street. Just kind of an example of what's happening here. Snow is covering a majority of the sidewalk with kind of a small compacted path that goes through the sidewalk. Nothing's really been shoveled this year. It's just been compacted down. Also, a tree branch is now also kind of compacted in the snow. The first picture there indicates the branch laying on top of it. The last picture, you can see it's kind of just been compacted and frozen into the path. So with this, staff is recommending abating the property immediately. This would probably be in the form of having our contracted services scrape the sidewalk and widening the path with equipment, removing the branch from that area, as well as applying salt to the sidewalk. Not sure if they'd be able to chisel all of that ice off of there, but certainly this would help the situation.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
I'd move forward with following staff's recommendation to immediately abate this property.
Second.
Motion and second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, go to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes, and we can adjourn to the council meeting. 8 minutes to spare.
We could go back to the lights more.
We could talk about that all night.